I'm Rob Licuria, Senior Editor at Gold Derby here, and I'm just completely delighted to be with three of the best TV showrunners on the planet for three amazing series that I love, and I know that you all love too. I'm joined by Nick Antosca, Chris Brancato, and Andrew Hinderaker. They're here to talk about, respectively, A Friend of the Family, limited series on Peacock, Godfather of Harlem, which is about to premiere season 3 on MGM Plus, and Let the Right One In, which is still airing its first season on Showtime. Gentlemen, welcome to our panel. My first question is really about how we often talk about how television has become, over the last few years, last 15, maybe 10 years, this peak TV concept. But what do you think about the challenge of not only bringing a particular vision to life, blood, sweat, and tears, but then to stand out in this crowded, chaotic marketplace of content and distractions? So in other words, is the worst fate for any series to simply be met with indifference and be ignored? Would you prefer to be disliked in those moments? I'm going to go to you first, Andrew, because your show is currently airing its first season. What are your thoughts on this?
I'm so excited to hear what Nick and Chris have to say, because they've been doing this a bit longer and have been really successful in creating series that I love and that have certainly stood out for me. So I'm going to learn from them. I think it is the challenge right now because there's so much content out there. There's so much material that's out there. With our series, we simply try to lean into what is most specific and what is most personal. And I think that for Let the Right One In is that idea that one of the scariest things on TV could also be one of the most moving, that that we're trying to write something that defies categorization from horror or drama, and that you can try to prove that premise by having a horror show that stars Demian Bashir and Anika Noni Rose. But it's a challenge, so I'm incredibly excited to hear what these guys say and to learn from them.
Right, gentlemen, who would like to go first? Tell me. Go for it.
I think the worst fate for a good show is to not be made. So if you get to make your show, it would suck if it was met with complete indifference. But if it's a meaningful experience making it, you made something good that you're proud of, then fair enough. I mean, it is a double-edged sword, but the age of peak TV means that a lot of people get to make shows, and a lot of shows get made that wouldn't otherwise, and voices get to be heard. I looking at my own career, almost every show that I've made is like a real long shot. It's like you think sort of like, oh man, somebody's going to get fired for greenlighting this, so let's just make it quick before they stop us. And I came up, right before I had my first show, Channel Zero. I was on Hannibal with Brian Fuller, which Chris Brancato knows well. I learned a lot. Yeah, but just putting a strange art project on TV, or putting something very challenging or weird on TV by sheer force of will and sometimes trickery. And there are more opportunities to do that in the last 10 years than there were for the 40 or 50 years before that. And that's a good thing.
Definitely. What about you, Chris? What do you think?
Well, first of all, streaming changed everything, which is to say that we were allowed to do things, for instance, on Narcos, that would be unfathomable in the television world I had worked in before. We shot it all in Colombia. We were allowed to have the Narcos speak in full Spanish with tons of subtitles. It was a level of creative freedom that then opened up the door for me to work on shows, and only shows that I cared about. that I had a vested interest in, that I had a vision for. I found that when I was work for hire on someone else's created show, sure, I could do it. And Brian Fuller is a genius and created this, piece of outsider art that should never have existed on NBC. It should have been on FX or something. But regardless, I find at this point in my career that the joy, there's a little sense of like, oh, you're just making shows now that get put up on a library shelf on whatever particular streamer. So it's a little less special. That said, for me, at my a ripe old age, the joy is in the doing. So if I love the show I'm working on and my day is filled with creation that has to do with the show I care about, then frankly, whether it does well or not is less important to me. Do I want it to do well? Yes. And the way I think you do that in today's crowded world of like, it's weird. There are tons of shows on the air, and yet it's incredibly difficult to sell a show. I don't even know what the point is. But the fact is, I've had a little success trying to mosh two things together that don't belong in the same sentence: organized crime and civil rights. And that then creates a situation where the executives are hearing something that has familiarity on both sides, but also because you're moshing them together, like, is entirely new.
Yeah.
And so I think you have to give that a lot of thought as you enter the sales marketplace. Like, what am I saying that gets them? Why here? Why now? Why is the show important to do right now? What's the contemporary relevance? Because if it could have been done 5 years ago or 5 years from now, then you shouldn't do it.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And by the way, Hannibal, I'm still not over that. That made such an impact on me as a viewer and as someone who appreciates art. Beautiful show. And that brings me to this. There are shows that we carry with us in our DNA. TV does that more than I think any other art form. We're passionate about good TV, aren't we? And I'd just love to know, what are you passionate about from either your upbringing when you first, started working in this industry, or even recently? What shows mean a lot to you as artists and creators?
I'll say one that really stuck with me from the last few years, which I don't hear people talk about, was this Israeli show, Losing Alice. It was on Apple TV, I think, but it was an acquisition. It is one of the most creepy, strange, sexy, weird shows that I've ever seen. I think it was all directed and written by one person. I could be wrong about that. I don't want to misspeak, but it is so delicious and so surprising and just unique that it stayed with me in the couple of years since I've seen it. I watched it and I thought, like, I wish that I had made this, which I don't think about too many things. So Losing Alice for me.
Nice. I'm just looking it up. Yep, I will certainly check that one out.
I want to say, not to be bragging, but in Hannibal, I'm the one who came up with the human totem pole. Brilliant. God, man. I have a framed picture of it somewhere hidden in my attic. For me, shows like Breaking Bad, Sopranos, the standard shows that involve crime interest me. I also love true crime, and I sort of lull myself to sleep every night by watching the 300th episode of the Forensic Files. I've seen them all like 10 times. And it's a 22-minute little murder that gets solved, and that for some crazy reason drifts me off into a pleasant sleep. So I'm strange that way. The funny thing is I don't like to watch TV that much. I don't have time. I spend all day watching TV, looking at cuts, et cetera, et cetera. So to some degree, what I watch is point specific. So the show I'm working on right now, which is called Hotel Cocaine, is a Latin Breaking Bad. So I'm going back and rewatching Breaking Bad. So a lot of it's work related, and seeing the moves that a Vince Gilligan makes, or Chris Mundy on Ozark.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Andrew, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. I think that in a lot of the shows, even the shows I admire, you tend to see you recognize the patterns and the moves, and okay, I'm seeing the act one into act two, act three, and so those shows where I'm just sort of blown away by what they're doing structurally. The shows like The Wire, or even right now Succession, where I feel like it's just on a different level and it's really playing with form in a way that I find so surprising and just so exciting and ambitious. And then I think I mentioned I got to write for the show called Penny Dreadful. That was for me so formative because that was my first gig, but also working for John Logan, who like myself started in like the little storefront theaters of Chicago to kind of and my first day on set told me we're making a play. We just have a lot nicer budget. That philosophy could be applied to the television world, even when you're making something ambitious and cinematic was for me super formative.
So exciting. Guys, thank you so much for your time today. I just friend of the family, everyone check it out, and we look forward to your next project, Nick. Chris, your show's coming out in January, Godfather of Harlem. Can't wait for that. And Andrew, let the right one in. We're about to see the finale in a couple of weeks, and I'm just desperate for season 2, so hurry up, Showtime. Everybody, thank you again, and good luck this award season.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.